Awesome.
So welcome, friends. It's wonderful to see you all here this morning. We're going to open the devotions with a chant in Greek. It is a chant that is from, you normally used at Easter services?
Yep, yeah.
Okay, so please, then we'll have a few other prayers and blend it a song.
Hi everyone. So I've never been to a Baha'i thing before, so I'm like really excited to kind of experience this new thing. I grew up Greek Orthodox, so this is like a Byzantine chant that we do for Easter. It's basically Christ is risen from the dead, you know, that whole, you heard the chant before, right? So that's the general gist of it. Normally it's just a voice, but that's a little kind of scant for me, so I'm going to do a little bit of a kind of drill with it on the piano. Thank you.
This is 5 also? Yes, okay. Oh, Son of Spirit, my first counsel is this: possess a pure, kindly, and radiant heart, that thine may be a sovereignty, ancient, imperishable, and everlasting.
Hello. This is a Jewish prayer for community. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'tzokei tzibur. How full of blessing you are, Eternal One, our God, Majesty of the universe, who has consecrated us with your commands and commanded us to occupy ourselves with the needs of the community.
This is a Baha'i prayer. O thou who art turning thy face towards God, close thine eyes to all things else and open them to the realm of all glorious. Ask whatever you wish of him alone. Seek whatever thou seekest from him alone. With a look he granted 1,000 100,000 hopes. With a glance, he healeth 100,000 incurable ills. With a nod, he laid balm on every wound. With a glimpse, he freeth the hearts from the shackles of grief. He doeth as he doeth, and what recourse have we? He carried out his will. He ordained what he pleaseth. Then better to thee to bow down thy head in submission and put thy trust in all merciful Lord. Abdul Baha.
Hello, my name is Alyssa, and this is a song called How Could Anyone? So they're gonna pull up the lyrics, and I'll sing it a few times so that, great, thank you. So that you guys can hear it, and then I'd love everyone to join along when you get the melody. Mask. Okay. It's okay.
Alyssa, what's the capo on? Six. Okay, great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. Yeah, everyone sing. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. Beautiful. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. All right, one more time. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
Good morning. We are so glad that you are here this morning with us. And if you recall, yesterday we talked about the vision of Baha'u'llah for a just and peaceful society, and where the structure of relationship that exists among different parts of that society, the individual, the community, and the institutions need to be based on principles that safeguard the welfare and well-being of everyone and to promote the spiritual and material progress of the whole society. So today we'll focus on how we can take little steps in that direction, adding to the work of generation upon generation to bring that vision into reality. The theme for this morning is educational endeavor and the Training Institute. And we are having Joel Neisen from the Baha'i Regional Council to talk a little bit about what we mean by educational endeavor and Training Institute. Joel, please.
Greetings, everyone. Love from the Regional Baha'i Council. It is so nice to be here. I had a really nice time yesterday. This is such a beautiful spot, this Poughkeepsie School. I think you picked a really good location for this activity. This was really good, as opposed to other possible locations. And I just wanted to compliment the logistics team and the planning team and all the people who are involved in the background that you might not see, although you probably know them, that have done such hard work to bring this together. This was wonderful. Even the facilitators, not to leave them out, of the small breakout groups have done a wonderful job. But what's really nice is how artistic all of you are. And the use of the arts, the singing, the choir, the artwork, putting up, the tree outside, the children leading prayer song yesterday, the video documenting the history of this locale. You are obviously very well endowed with artistic talents, which is very noticeable, and it makes this a very warm, loving atmosphere to be in. So that's wonderful. Instead of just spending time reading quotes, we spent a lot of time on artistic endeavors, which is perfect. And, not to leave him out, having our auxiliary board member, Nima, yesterday, to be with us for the day, that was a special treat. Today, the auxiliary board members have to go to all these different conferences and gatherings. So he's in the Bronx right now, attending that gathering. And as you probably know, there are 10,000 of these gatherings happening within this month or so in the world. More than 560, the last count, although it's probably more, in the United States, and in our beloved 9 blessed states in the Northeast, there are at least 43, although there are probably some more that I'm not aware of. So this is an incredible part of this worldwide activity going on. 10,000 of these throughout the world. I wanted to remind all of us of why we're actually here. What was the purpose of this type of gathering? And part of it is from a message from the Universal House of Justice that they released September 15th, 2021, which I'm going to read to you. It's not that long. These conferences then will give the participants an opportunity to gain greater insight into the nature of the spiritual enterprise in which they are engaged. A sense of distance transversed so far, and a deeper understanding of the exigencies of the current stage in the unfoldment of the divine plan. They will strive to enhance appreciation of the privilege of being part of a community that has set its gaze upon the spiritual and material transformation of society, and the bounty of being connected by bonds of love, which you all obviously have, and camaraderie with brothers and sisters in a global effort, each one laboring within the same framework of action, all united under the sheltering shadow of the covenant. So just this very short paragraph really sets the stage for why we're here yesterday and today. This is to have a common vision so that we all understand that we're into community building. But we're not doing it as individuals, we're doing it as part of communities. That we're doing it as families, as groups of communities. This is an activity where engaging others of like mind to join us. So we're not asking people to sign a declaration card to become a Baha'i. What we're asking is for people who are like-minded to join with us in this community building activity going throughout the world. Because as you know, the world, there's some pretty ugly parts of it going on right now, and I'm sure you can all think of examples. And instead of dwelling on all those unpleasant things, wouldn't you rather be engaged in building something better? And I cannot influence a politician, although I've tried. I cannot influence governments to do different things. I have no direct line to whatever. But what I can do is engage in my local community and try to affect local change. And if enough of us are doing that, the world is changing. So this part of being 10,000 conferences and gatherings, which are not a one-time event, but it's an activity that's going to go on for many years. We're told this is part of a global 9-year plan, and there are further plans after that. So this is not a one-shot deal. This is one part of an evolving plan of building community. So I'm very honored to be here. So how was my talk about yesterday? The points that you really want to take away is that this gathering is so that we have a common vision. So we don't have this person's idea and that person's idea and this one's idea of what we're about. The common vision is really that we're into community building, and we're doing it as a community. Part of what we did yesterday was assess what our communities looked like. We looked at them, maybe a lot of the negative things were mentioned, a few positive things were mentioned, but it's good to know where we're starting from, what resources we have available to us, so that we can then make plans and move forward. And someone made the comment, I'm sure you've heard it more than once, do we only see problems or do we appreciate opportunities? When we look around us, do we just see all the negative things or do we see the opportunities for change of how we can do things differently? So hopefully you come away this weekend with the vision of appreciating opportunities and not just looking at all the negatives. If you think of education, and some of the quotes were up before, if you think of education, let's say we want to change our community. Do we just wander out and do things, or do we think that a little bit of training is necessary? Changing our community might be hosting a children's class or a junior youth group or any activity like that. Do you think that a teacher, my mother and daughter are teachers, really began teaching without some kind of training so that they knew how to encourage people, what lesson plans they'd want to have, what activities they want to engage in? Training is an essential part of this activity. So this theme 4 that we're engaged in this morning is really to explore part of that training activity. But training, again, is not having a teacher in the old model and students, or a mentor and mentees, but this is something that we do together. where we collaborate, where we accompany each other on a path. And in December 12th, 2011, you can tell I like quotes, and I like to read them. The Universal House of Justice gave a quote about this training activity, and I'm going to read it to you. The main sequence of courses, and this is referring to the Ruhi Institute, is organized so as to set the individual, whether Baha'i or not, on a path being defined by the accumulating experiences of the community in its endeavor to open before humanity the vision of Baha'u'llah's world order. The very notion of a path is itself indicative of the nature and purpose of the courses, for a path invites participation. It beckons to new horizons. It demands effort and movement. It accommodates different paces and strides. It is structured and defined. A path can be experienced and known not only by one or two, but by scores upon scores. It belongs to the community. To walk a path is a concept equally expressive. It requires of the individual volition and choice. It calls for a set of skills and abilities, but also elicits certain qualities and attitudes. It necessitates a logical progression, but admits, when needed, related lines of exploration. It may seem easy at the onset, but becomes more challenging further along, and eventually one walks the path in the company of others. Isn't that what we're about? We're engaged in this path, and part of the path is learning about ourselves, loving our neighbors, engaged in community activities. And what we gain from walking on this path is capacity. We gain the capacity to talk to others, to have elevated conversations, to talk about spiritual principles, to talk about virtues, to talk about the education of children, to talk about things that are important to everybody. And whether you label it as Baha'i or anything else, these are still activities that I believe everyone really wants to be engaged in. How many people do you know that don't want their children to be well-behaved and virtuous? You know, I think this is a common part of humanity. So we are engaged in a process, a path, walking together, accompanying each other to gain capacities to build community. That's what we're really engaged in here. There was a quote, which, the second one here, regarding man as a mine in gems of inestimable, that's such a hard word to say, value. Education can alone cause it to reveal its treasures and enable mankind to benefit therefrom. So if you think of a mine, let's say it's a diamond mine, although don't think of the negative aspects, just think of the nice part of a diamond mine. It's not owned by De Beers. When you take the diamond out of the mine, it really looks like a kind of dirty rock. It doesn't really look like anything. If you've ever seen a raw diamond before, it really is not that pretty. But with the craft of gemology, it's transformed into this brilliant thing that can glow and reflect light and be symbolic of marriage and love and all sorts of things. It takes a certain amount of effort to transform that raw, not that pretty object into something brilliant and gorgeous. That's what human beings are too. We are gems, and we might come out a little bit raw, and we need to be transformed. And this educational process that we're engaged in, this path we're walking together, is how we are transformed. And it's a path that will last your entire life. And I'm certain I do not know how to walk the path very well. I struggle at times, but the nice part is that we're doing it together. So I'm going to leave you with those thoughts and know that we will have some other comments and then go to our breakout sessions to talk more about this.
Thank you, Joel, so much. So as was mentioned, the purpose of this segment of the conference is to give you a little taste of the model of education that we are talking about. Let me go back a little and maybe define some of these terms. So as was mentioned, Baha'u'llah considered that education is indispensable for both personal transformation and for the social transformation. And we really cannot have social transformation without changing the way we make sense of the world. And in order to make sense of the world in a different way, we need educational processes that foster that change, that help us through. So the educational program that Baha'is have been experimenting with in the last 25 years all over the world, in small villages in India and Africa, and in the most advanced, materially advanced cities in the Western world, the same program, exact same thing, has been experimented to see how that would help individual transformation and social transformation. And we have learned a lot about it. And so this model that Baha'is are now offering, and we are asking you to examine it, is called the Training Institute, and is a capacity building program. And you might ask, what is a capacity? Capacity is a combination of knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And you might say, okay, what capacities we may want to build? And these are capacities, for example, to reflect virtues, capacities to become protagonists of our own development and development of our communities, the capacity to be inspired by the Word of God, the capacity to educate the young and our youth, the capacity to walk a path of service and to accompany others that are walking with us, the capacity to do social action, and so on. So the purpose of this segment is to give a little taste, and what we're gonna do is that we're gonna have some readings and little video clips of people who have been involved in this process, in this training institute. And what we hope would happen is that when you go to your breakout rooms in a small group, you can consult on how this program can be applied in your communities and what is required to enable every individual, young or old, to participate in such a program in your neighborhood and in your own towns. So that would be the focus of our small group discussions. So I have Mary and Bill helping me out with the readings here, and please start.
The importance of education to a Baha'i conception of spiritual and social transformation can hardly be overestimated. Baha'u'llah says, "Regard man as a mine, rich in gems of inestimable value. Education can, alone, cause it to reveal its treasures and enable mankind to benefit therefrom." And Abdu'l-Baha says, the most urgent requirement is the promotion of education. It is inconceivable that any nation should achieve prosperity and success unless this fundamental concern is carried forward.
A letter from Shoghi Effendi. Baha'u'llah considered education as one of the most fundamental factors of a true civilization. This education, however, in order to be adequate and fruitful, should be comprehensive in nature and should take into consideration not only the physical and the intellectual side of man, but also his spiritual and ethical aspects. Divine education is that of the kingdom of God. It consists in acquiring divine perfections, and this is true education. For in this state, man becomes the focus of divine blessings, the manifestation of the words, "Let us make man in our image and after our likeness." This is the goal of the world of humanity.
Of education in the work of community building is unmistakable. And in the field of social action, the provision of education remains the signature contribution of Baha'is in most parts of the world. Preeminent among the structures and agencies created by the Baha'i world to offer education is, of course, the Training Institute. That's from the Universal House of Justice.
Also from the House of Justice, a process that seeks to raise capacity within a population to take charge of its own spiritual, social, and intellectual development. The activities that drive this process, and in which newly found friends are invited to engage, meetings that strengthen the devotional character of the community, classes that nurture the tender hearts and minds of children, groups that channel the surging energies of junior youth, circles of study open to all that enable people of varied background to advance on equal footing and explore the application of the teachings to their individual and collective lives.
When I was asked to join one of the early study circles, I thought to myself, why should I do that? I'm already a teacher. I was raised in a Baha'i family. I went to children's classes, character building classes. I'm a good person, and I have so much student loans, and I want to start a family and no time, and why should I do that, right? And I remember the person that invited me to join lovingly said, just try it one time. So he put me in a class, in a study circle with about 5-6 other people that are like-minded, people that want to bring good to the world. And they were all of diverse background. And they were different ages, different races, different religious backgrounds. And we all sat together and we started Ruhi Book 1. Of course, in the beginning of the book, it talks about the relationship between the participant and the tutor, and I witnessed our tutor and how he was so different than the way my approach to teaching was. Our approach at the university level is more like I know it all, and the students are learning passively. They have to pass their tests, and those numbers are indicators of what they know. Whereas in the Ruhi class that we sat in, he was more listening to all of us. He was very knowledgeable, very loving, very patient. He listened. He wouldn't tell us what the right answer was. We were learning ourselves from the creative words that were available to us in the book and reflecting, consulting together. And we learned a lot from each other. Led us all to become closer together because we had that conversation. And our bond grew in those 2-3 hours that we were together to the point that we decided that we wanted to continue the book. And we went from book 1 to book 2, from book 2 to book 3. And you can imagine now I got friends. When you do the Ruhis together with a group and you not only learn together, but you do the activities that are related to the Ruhis, the service projects, the bond that develops becomes extremely strong. Anyway, once we finished book 7, I was asked to, and this is now year 2000, I was asked to co-facilitate. So now I became a tutor. And I actually was totally transformed from the years before. And even at the school where I'm teaching now, I'm applying those principles that I learned as a tutor in the late 1990s. I would like to now share with you maybe one story of one of the participants, a mom of a beautiful daughter, and she started book 1. She was also a professor. She started book 1. Her husband joined us in the middle of book 1 because he had seen some change in his wife, and the bond between them had grown stronger. And by the time we got to book 3, where it's about children's classes and children's education and development, the child that was at that time 8 years old came to me and said, now I'm like an aunt now, it's no more like I'm the facilitator of the mom and dad, came to me and said, you know, my mom, she spanked me last night. And I said, really? Because, you know, we had talked about the nobility of the child, how we're all born noble. And I said, so what do you think? She said, well, I think that my mom loves me so much that she spanked me because she wants me to be a better person. I didn't say anything. I don't interfere in different families' dynamics, and I try not to judge, even though I'm a mom of 3 myself. And if anyone is a parent, you know how hard that is. I think it's the hardest job in the world. But we continued book 3, and what happened was the mom ended up becoming so loving towards not just her children, that she ended up going to the school where this child went to. But the mom came to me and said, you know, Sherry, I was, you know, hitting my child, thinking that I'm doing it right because that's how I grew up. And after doing book 3 and understanding about children and their soul and their preciousness and they're a gift to us for a certain amount of time, I'm never going to do that again.
A study circle is a small group that meets regularly to study the course materials. Anyone aged 15 or older, whether a Baha'i or not, is welcome to take part. The group is brought together by a tutor. The tutor must create an environment conducive to the spiritual empowerment of individuals who will come to see themselves as active agents of their own learning, as protagonists of a constant effort to apply knowledge to effect individual and collective transformation. That's from the Universal House of Justice in a message from April 2010.
I'm Zena Arturo. I'm from the Croton and Hudson community. I just want to talk about how the Ruhi books have really inspired me over the last few years, and I got hooked. The small group involved some members of the Newcastle community and Northern Westchester community, and we just so enjoyed studying the different Ruhi books. Even when I traveled every summer, the last couple of summers, to Guam, the time difference was 14 hours, but I so did not want to miss any of the sessions, so I'd wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning so that I could be part of the classes. Anyway, all I can say is the books have inspired me to read the faith more, pray more, and serve more.
Spiritual education of children. Children are the most precious treasure a community can possess. for in them are the promise and guarantee of a future. An atmosphere needs to be maintained in which children feel that they belong to a community and share in its purpose. Let them never forget the imperative to tend to the needs of the children of the world and offer them lessons that develop their spiritual faculties and lay the foundations of a noble and upright character.
Let them come to realize the full to help young people form a strong moral identity in their early adolescent years and empower them to contribute to the well-being of their communities. They assist junior youth to navigate through a crucial stage of their lives and to become empowered to direct their energies towards the advancement of civilization. This is from Messages from the Universal House of Justice.
I had the privilege of serving as an animator for a junior youth group in Westchester. The role of the animator is to be a true friend to the junior youth as they explore their role in society. It's at this age that they are starting to see the world through a more mature lens and develop new understandings. Their often misunderstood rebellious nature is their keen sense of justice backed by a youthful vigor. I wanted to become an animator to help harness and guide this immense source of energy. The world is constantly evolving and changing ever more rapidly since the proliferation of the internet. The junior youth's ability to adapt to new situations provides them with a unique perspective that is more important now than ever to listen to as humanity faces some of its most challenging issues. The Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program provides a safe space for the JY to develop their ability to withstand the many negative influences constantly at work, to develop their capacity to read their realities, and to help them find solutions to the problems facing their communities. I was constantly in awe of the group I worked with. During the height of COVID, they would sign on to Zoom every week, even though I am sure they were probably very sick of Zoom by this point. But they wanted to be there. They'd enjoyed the space we had created. Further unhindered by the limitations set by the pandemic, they organized an online bake sale to raise money for our local food pantry. This project was all of their own creation, from inception to completion. I was inspired by their understanding of the problems in their community, their creativity in working towards a solution, and their drive to complete a goal. Society at large casts teenagers as too young to understand, lazy, or rebels without a cause, but in my experience, I have seen the exact opposite. When given the space and opportunity to do so, the junior youth and youth can do extraordinary things. As humanity faces these great challenges, we must call upon this group to help us build vibrant communities that can withstand the forces of prejudice, hate, and inequality. My hope moving forward is that any JY present here today takes something, anything, some sliver of knowledge that they've learned here, back to their friends, and maybe even feel empowered to start their own junior youth group and be the change they wish to see in their community.
Regardless of their social situations, young people aspire for spiritual and intellectual growth and to make a contribution to the fortunes of humanity. They have many wonderful powers, and channeling them properly is an important concern. In selfless service to society is the possibility for both personal growth and enhancing capacity to contribute to social progress. Service to humanity is service to God, Abdu'l-Baha has stressed. To those who have arisen to serve, he has urged, let the love and light of the kingdom radiate through you until all who look upon you shall be illumined by its reflection. Through directing their talents and abilities to the elevation of society, they become the cause of the tranquility of the world of creation.
Friends, now we're going to go to our breakout room and we're going to discuss how we can see this training program in our own neighborhoods and in our local communities, and then we'll come back and we share our ideas. Thank you so much.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Look at how they come through the door when you do that. All over the world, I'm gonna let it shine. All over the world, I'm gonna let it shine. All over the world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. All right, so what we're going to do this afternoon, I think we have critical mass. Some folks are still coming in. We're going to have a report back so that we can share with one another the gems of understanding that we came to as we thought collectively about this notion of education and the institute process. So we'll start with our reporters. If you are a reporter for your group, well, it doesn't matter. There are enough of us for you to get out and come back in. Why don't we start with you, Marianne and Mark?
Okay, hold on. I'm just finding my cheat sheet that I took the picture of. There we go. I have a cheat sheet. Okay, so we discussed, we are, right, I'm Orange County. Our lights shine in Orange County. And we discussed what comprehensive meant in one of the quotes, and that it meant more than being complete or all-inclusive, it meant being integral and congruent with and having integrity so that our words and deeds matched. And we also discussed the essential, how education is essential to the prosperity. I'm supposed to be on the blue tape. It's a learning process. Essential to the prosperity and success of civilization, and that the path is about finding oneness, and that's what the Ruhi Institute does, because it gives, instead of each silo in a community having and discussing their own concerns and what the solutions might be, it brings everybody together on equal footing and allows us to find our oneness and our sameness instead of looking at our difference. And the other thing we talked about was it has to be inclusive on, all children, universal, and we have to model our behavior. Our behaviors, we need to model behaviors that are all those things. And did I forget anything? Okay. And we did, and we discussed what are the gems of inestimable value hidden in man, and we all wrote worship. Well, we all wrote different virtues about that, and that why can only education reveal them? Because through education of the spiritual nature, spiritual and ethical development that needs to be added to the current education, especially in the United States, we can teach, we find love, and out of love comes all the other virtues. So that's what this says, and he's going to talk about his.
Thank you. And the only thing I have to add is that we have a path towards that, which is the green path.
Not a yellow brick road.
That's right.
Next reporter. Who's our reporter for the other groups? Andrea.
This one? Is okay?
This one, in the middle.
Oh,
Yeah.
just kidding. Oh, the one that's too high for me. All right, now.
And stand on the blue line there.
Okay, perfect. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So we also focused on the quote regarding men as a mine rich in gems, and we said that some of these, that the mine is kind of like a cave, right? And if we dig into it, they're filled with treasures. And these treasures, some of these treasures that we mentioned were love, justice, spirituality, kindness, humbleness, patience, fortitude, generosity. And I don't have it with me, but the Abdi and Godsley put together a beautiful, they used the Baha'i star, and it's hanging up somewhere, so you should definitely take a look at it because it was absolutely beautiful. And then what we really focused our conversations on were steps to ensure the education is, touching about spirituality, but also student growth. And what we really kind of invested a lot of our conversation regarding is politics right now, right, in education, and not being mindful of what our students actually need. So we talked about students kind of being bombarded with so many different things, the stress, they're suicidal, they're depressed, there is just so much going on, and we're not really reaching out to these students. So, and to the children, to the youth. So what we said was participating is huge. As grown-ups, being involved. George, you mentioned a great thing. It's saying asking your students, asking your children, what are they learning in schools? Even if it's a sensitive topic, making sure that they're understanding, so you are having that communication, that connection with them. And then being involved outside of it, joining your local libraries, joining the school board meetings, just listening in, hearing what's going on. That's really, really important. And, hopefully one day we get to the point where it's less political, right? Less about winning just chairs and being involved, but really thinking about the growth of students and our children. So I just want to make sure that we got everything. So yeah, involvement, research, and participation. And I think, did I leave anything else out that oh, and I'm sorry, yes, one more thing. Using our connections. So what can we do as of right now? Using connections that we have to kind of spread that word, spread that wealth. So if there was a local, I think you mentioned it, there was a local woman in New Rochelle, a local Baha'i, and she invited 70 Baha'is to come for a devotional. Martha, okay. And out of 70, 61 came. That's huge. That's a huge reach. So that's something that we can do right now as Baha'is, is kind of start spreading that, spreading the word, and being involved. So. I'm sorry, did you want to?
70 people.
Oh, 70.
Not just Baha'i.
70 people.
It's actually 60% not Baha'i.
Next reporter. Next reporter. Ted, are you reporting? Joe?
Here we go. We got. How do you take the lead?
I love what you've done with reporting.
I didn't start it though. I didn't start it.
Oh, you may have.
Let's see. Following the lead. There we go.
Go ahead.
You want me to do it?
Yes.
All right. Let's see. Okay, so what we got here are just a few takeaways. Let's see. I'll hold it with you. We're the outers. It sounds like some kind of I don't know, a type of Star Trek or something. A fringe Star Trek. Yeah, so Ulster is a big focus. We really identified through this that there was a number of us who were in a community building process, had a sense of isolation, that this, finally it brought us together so we could realize we're really walking this path. Now we could see that we're on this path of service together.
Yeah, there's a lot of us from Ulster that we didn't realize there were so many of us.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's really exciting. So so we identified, immediately that there's an ability and a need for a junior youth group and New Paltz, and to have another addition to our book 1 and 3, which has been in between Poughkeepsie and sort of west of Poughkeepsie, and that we're preparing to bring the insights from this conference to a conference on the west side, which is, would be wonderful. Anybody who is accessible to that, please feel welcome to, engage with it. If you know people who would like to participate in something west of Poughkeepsie, please do get in touch with us, and that we'll be able to identify, what Baha'is and friends of this community building process are in the area of, west of Poughkeepsie with our ABM and Marie McBaha, which is, sorry. And also to pray specifically. There was one of our friends there. I'm terrible with names. What is our friend's name? Patrice, right, who's in Saugerties, who just this sense of isolation, that really all efforts on her part were fully put to work, and that what was necessary at a certain time was there just needs to be Baha'is in this area, people who understand or engaged with the community building process. So she was praying for the specific, for Baha'u'llah to bring this support, and then it's like, boom, here's the circle, and we've all kind of, climbing up on different sides of the mountain. Now we've found each other in this perch, so it's pretty exciting. Yeah.
All right, Joe, you're up, buddy. There were actually two groups from Westchester, so they split us in two, and we did a poster on a number of people did a poster on the virtues, so I don't even know where they are, but they're on the wall. They're on the wall? Okay. Out by the train. Before the cafeteria. Okay, so you can look at them. In our breakout rooms, we discussed two questions, one having to do with the sort of obstacles we faced in developing these sort of spiritual things. One of them was, and this was partly a recap of some conversations that were had yesterday, some of the problems with social isolation and the challenges with COVID. So we recapped some of the issues of how to meet people, working with existing organizations, some of the home visits people have used to continuing reaching out, because there are things you can do besides just be frustrated with things. The other thing we focused on is some of the initiatives we need to take regarding the total education of the youth, both intellectual and spiritual. The feeling was, particularly in Westchester, they give very good intellectual education, but nothing at all in the way of spiritual education. So some of the things that were brought up was the fact that you can get more knowledge out of things if you work with existing things. There are ways you can even work with areas like
the schools themselves or school boards in particular. You need to know, you need to be careful with some things. There is a skill to using language that is not loaded so that you can present your present these programs for spiritual education without getting people defensive about religious or, you know, these sort of third wires that teachers and that nobody wants to go, third rails that nobody wants to touch who's involved in education. You know, you don't use spiritual, but there are words like moral and ethical and things like that, that depending upon who you're talking to, you would use those. There are resources you can use. There are also non-religious resources you can use, or if you know about them, they're very plainly spiritual, though. And there's things like the existing virtues curriculum, for instance. And another one last idea we had was for youth particularly is to inspire them by showing models of people who had actually affected positive change, things that they can follow. And some asides we discussed are things like Tamara's Sunday virtues, which is one way to connect to that. Sorry. That's it for me. You're welcome.
Yes. So I am from Westchester, and our group was 18, I think. Yeah, that was 18. Okay, so we were focusing on the questions that were towards the end. How can the circle of these participating, my glasses, participating in the courses of the Institute be widened to raise the capacity for service in our local areas? Our group focused on two major questions. There were 5. Since we didn't have much time, so we focused on the number 1. This was the one. How can we widen the group that we already have? And the second one was, how can we get involved with the schools and spiritual and intellectual discussions with the children and youth in our communities? So the first one that we came up with was discussing about the Ruhi books and the institutions, was that Ruhi books are there for Baha'is to know that there are Ruhi books, but how does the larger community know what Ruhi books are? So in order for us to get to that point from A to B, we have to have some sort of like initiating some connections. It is important for us to connect and have devotionals or discussions where we can invite people, and then maybe have devotionals for situations like if there is a birthday or there is a sickness or something, that we can initiate the process of spirituality and get them and guide them to the direction, and then maybe guide them gradually to the point of understanding what we have in Ruhi books. So this is point from A to B. What is it that we have to do is the first step. And then we offer them the spiritual guidance of what we as Baha'is know, what we have learned, and we have to learn and continue to learn in our journey to being a better person and a better human being. And we have sometimes we say we have the practical solutions to difficult problems that we face in the society. So those are the things that we have to focus on. The second issue was, how do we engage our school systems and spirituality, as we know that we cannot use the word religion in schools anymore. So it becomes very difficult to engage people. So the best way is to engage one-to-one people on parenting groups, and then ask the parents to join in. Like-minded parents will be encouraged to sort of like join in to learn about the spiritual solutions to the most difficult problems, whether it is political or whether it's economical or any other material issues that we are facing currently. And so we have to have meetup groups. We can have engaging the community in libraries or bringing them to come to the libraries where we can have discussions on parenting or giving spiritual solutions to these problems, and having sort of like discussion groups also. And there are things like Nextdoor. I don't know anybody familiar with that, Nextdoor. So Nextdoor, advertising in Nextdoor, what we are doing in terms of talking about issues that are currently people are facing difficulties in getting the solutions, because in everything that comes towards us has spiritual solution. And if we buy the spiritual sort of like answers to all the problems, then perhaps we will be able to solve them better than any other way. Intellectual, yes, but spiritual is the main thing that we have to sort of like focus on. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the screening of a movie about the life of Abdul Baha, the son of Baha'u'llah. It's called Exemplar. Unfortunately, because of the time limits, we're going to watch only the second half of the movie when Abdul Baha visits America, and it starts in 1912. The movie is available on YouTube, and we highly recommend you watch it. We are also asking you to watch the movie with the intention of discussing it with your table mates at lunch. And what we like you to look for in the movie is that once someone referred to Abdul Baha as an example of authentic radicalism. So see if you agree with that description, and if so, how did it manifest in his actions, dealings with the norms of the society when he was visiting the US? Okay? Thank you.
Welcome, and thank you all for being here through this conference. We are now at our final session, and I'm really looking forward to this with you. We're going to kick off this session with remarks from the Secretary of the Regional Baha'i Council for the Northeastern States, Mrs. Marie McNair.
I have to always lower it. So thank you, Tamara. It's such a joy to be here with everybody and to have experienced your wonderful conference this weekend, and to get to see people in person and give virtual hugs and all of that, and to hear the exciting things that are happening in the area and the opportunities ahead. What I was thinking about when I was thinking about this last topic, which is social action and discourses of society, I was really thinking about how can we see this in light of what we have considered so far in our conference? Because what we're really talking about is how do we bring to a culmination everything that we started thinking about on Saturday morning, and where we are now, where ultimately what we want to do is we want to affect change in our communities and ultimately change in the world. And I thought it was very meaningful when we watched the film of Abdul Baha today. And it struck me to think about when they talked about that the problems in the world, they mentioned 3 words, that the problems in the world really come down to 3 words. And they mentioned ignorance, poverty, and and violence. And when we think about that, you can think about how everything that we're going through in the world relates to those 3 things. And then when I think back to how we started the conference, when we were talking about the vision of Baha'u'llah and what that meant, and it reinforced, again, it was reinforced in the film about Abdu'l-Baha, when it talked about how it was that Abdu'l-Baha said that Baha'u'llah gave us, he drew this circle of unity. And we know that in drawing that circle of unity, we know that what Baha'u'llah gave to the world was this gift of God to humanity for this age, which is to bring about the recognition of the reality of the oneness of humanity, that we all belong to one human family. So when we think about ignorance and poverty and violence, and we think about what is it that ultimately will solve those problems, isn't it true that we can say that these are related to a need for profound changes in how we are as individuals, in how we relate to each other as communities, and how we relate to each other as a global society? And wouldn't it be necessary for the world, really, and individuals as well, to undergo a dramatic or an all-encompassing transformation in who we are and how we function and how we work together? So the problems that we've been discussing this weekend have their origin in a spiritual situation that the world is poised and working toward solving, and these are things that won't be solved by putting Band-Aids on them. We know, for example, that good-hearted people for a long time, and God bless them, and we need them, and we need to work with them, have been trying to feed the hungry for thousands of years. Have they been able to eliminate the problem of hunger? Not yet. We know that people with beautiful minds have tried to eliminate the problems of racial injustice in our country and of prejudice of all kinds around the world. They've dedicated their lives to this. They have given, in many cases, their lives to this. And we need to work with them, and we need to join in those efforts. Have they yet been successful in eliminating that problem of those multifaceted kinds of prejudice, of race and gender and economics and all the kinds of prejudice that inflict our world? Has there been success yet? No, there hasn't. Right? And we could go on and on talking about the kinds of difficulties that we have in the world. And we can say that many, many efforts are taking places. Many people in our own communities have been trying to fix our schools, for example. They have been trying to bring together neighbors as a united neighborhood, and these are all wonderful efforts, and we should be part of them and contribute to them. But still people feel isolated, and still we have an educational program that needs fixing. So what is it? What is it that Baha'u'llah has brought that Baha'is are saying is unique to the world? And what is it that we're seeing working around the world that we're saying, yes, We'll work with everybody who's trying whatever they're doing in our communities. We work with like-minded organizations. We become part of them because these are important things to do. But we also have something to contribute. And we talked about that this weekend also when we talked about the framework for action that the Universal House of Justice has given to us. Now, when we think about a framework, what is a framework, right? It's a, I don't know how to explain it, it's a framework, right? It tells us that we have a structure. And we can think about that framework, that it's a structure, and in that structure, there are certain activities, there are certain ways of doing things, there are certain ways of behaving, there are certain ways of working together. And what we have found is, and when I say we, in this case, I'm talking about the Baha'i world and everybody who is working with them. And I'm talking specifically about the last 25 years, because it's 26 years. It's been 26 years that we've been working on learning about this framework for action. And it's thrilling to me that it's a framework for action. And we know it's a learning process. What we're doing is we have found that this framework works. It's quite amazing. It starts off very simply. It can start with one household, one person. It can start with one family. But the activities are such that they can have a profound effect. And when that one person or that one family or that one group of people find a way to work with other people on those same activities in that same way, undergoing the kind of transformation that happens when they're involved in those activities and those attitudes of unity and togetherness and consultation and all the things that fit within the framework, for some reason, it's working. And we're learning more and more about it. So this is the unique framework that the Baha'is have to offer. And so what are we doing this weekend? We're examining all kinds of possibilities in our area, in our this part of New York State to see what will work. And we're also looking at this framework. And we're saying, what can we do in here? How can we take that framework and how can we take it knowing that it's working and apply it here? Because it's beautiful. And why is it beautiful? Because it gets to the heart of what we're talking about, to the spiritual essence of what's going on, which isn't something else. It's the essence of who we are as people and how we need to transform. And without that transformation, we would be another group of people, very well-intentioned, very sincere in our effort, who haven't quite figured out how to be as effective as possible. So this is working around the world. And as it continues working, we will continue learning about this. And so we invite everybody to be part of that, to take our hands with us and be part of this learning process, because it's developing capacity in children, in junior youth, in youth and adults throughout the world to change who they are and to work together. And it's tied with a bow. And I love this bow, because what is this bow? It's the bow ultimately of unity and love. And without that, nothing will work. So I want to read you one very short quote from the Universal House of Justice, sent to the Baha'is in America, dealing with the issue of race unity. But I think this applies to everything we're trying to do, including solving this issue of racial injustice. And you'll see why when you hear it. Ultimately, the power to transform the world is affected by love. Love originating from relationship with the divine, love ablaze among members of a community, love extended without restriction to every human being. And so when we're talking about social action and we're talking about the discourses of society, it's within that framework of unity and that framework of love that we found effective that we're talking about it. Thank you.
The rain must shed light, and the sun must rise. The star must gleam, and the full moon must shine. The rain must shed light, and the sun must rise. Oh, flame of the love of God, the rain must shed light, and the sun must rise. The star must gleam, and the full moon must rise. The rain must shed light, and the sun must rise. Oh, flame of the love of God.
The world is engulfed in darkness. The gloom of hatred clouds the land. The stench of war rises, and friend turns against friend. But in this perilous darkness, oh, in this gloomy day, I cried out to the Lord, and I can hear the Lord say,
The rain must shed light, and the sun must rise. The star must gleam, and the full moon must rise. The rain must shed light, and the sun must rise. Oh, flame of the love of God.
Now people are actually dying of willful ignorance, misinformation and disinformation I behold with every glance. But in this perilous darkness, oh, in this gloomy day, I cried out to the Lord, and I can hear the Lord say,
The
rain
must
shed
shed
light,
and the sun must rise.
Oh,
The stars must gleam,
and the
full moon must shine. The rain must shed light, and the sun must rise.
Oh, flame of the love of God, since thou art a ray, a moment. I'm sorry, I don't know if the mics are still on. Just to say, I don't know, I haven't been here today, but if you haven't taken a moment, please do take a moment right now for the people of Buffalo. It is heart-wrenching. It is disturbing. It is heartbreaking. It is unfortunate on all kinds of levels. But we were just singing a song about the flame of love, of the love of God. And I want to ask that everybody take that moment of silence to fill your hearts with the love of God for these poor folks. Thank you.
Um, so Marie just was sharing with us that we have not solved racism yet. And we don't have any kind of way to solve racism. Hello, can you hear me? Nope, now you can. We can't solve racism just by legislation, because there was no legislation that would have stopped that particular individual with his ideology from shooting somebody. It was already against the law. There are already hate crimes on the books. So, can I get my slides? There we go. So, well, there was a plan. It's a little different. We're going to go through it kind of quickly. Try to. Is it on? Let's see. The symbol that you see on the screen is from that country. It is the symbol that represents the principle of Sankofa, described in the Carter G. Woodson Center as meaning, it is not taboo to fetch what is at risk of being left behind. The writings of Baha'u'llah support this particular gem of African wisdom. Baha'u'llah writes, "Say, O ye that have eyes to see, the past is the mirror of the future. Gaze ye therein and be apprised thereof. Perchance ye may be aided thereby to recognize the friend, and may be not the cause of his displeasure. In this day the choicest fruit of the tree of knowledge is that which serveth the welfare of humanity and safeguardeth its interests." And that is Baha'u'llah from the Tabernacle of Unity. And so I want to talk about what's at risk of being left behind when we talk about social transformation. So there are a lot of ways that social transformation comes about. Can come about by legislative action. That is to say, a law could be passed, could come about by judicial action, as we're seeing with the controversy about Roe v. Wade. It can come about by executive fiat, right? We can have COVID protocols that are different in every single municipality because some executive has the ability to just say so. But we don't have to wait for those kinds of actions to effectuate social transformation. We have been sharing in this conference the means whereby we can take social transformation into our own hands. In launching this conference, we have embarked upon a journey of learning together how to make our communities the vibrant communities they can be. And we've learned something about what vibrant communities look like. They're communities where people care about one another, experience and create joyful, shared spaces of worship. Baha'is have learned over the years how to put in motion a process whereby vibrant communities are the inevitable result. That learning is still ongoing. We in this conference are learning how to apply this model with a proven track record to the places where we live. The choicest fruit of our learning are communities where we all thrive.
Every age has its own problem, and every soul its particular aspiration.
Oh, need a mic on the floor. There we go. Yes, that's on.
Every age has its own problem, and every soul its particular aspiration. The remedy of the world needeth in the present day afflictions can never be the same as that which a subsequent age may require. Be anxiously concerned with the needs of the age ye live in, and center your deliberations on its exigencies and requirements.
Center your deliberations. What we have provided here, what we are sharing here, is a practical way to do exactly that. Deep understanding of our communities happen heart to heart. We have the opportunity to make it our constant vocation to be friends with our neighbors. It's one thing to shake our hands in dismay that there's an opioid epidemic, or that the schools are failing our kids. It's another thing altogether to know a mom fearful of the forces of negativity on her son or daughter. We can pray together and thereby get to know what is really deep in the hearts of our friends. We can care for our children's spiritual development and give them the tools to navigate the world with a sense of possibility and love and justice. This session, the final one of the day, is our opportunity to get up, stand up, and take a next step, to take the analysis we did in session 1, the vision we set for our own communities in session 2, and the tools that we've learned about in session 3, and make a difference in the lives of our community. As the intensity of community building work in a cluster increases, the friends there inevitably become more conscious of social, economic, or cultural barriers that are impeding people's spiritual and material progress. In reflecting on such situations, it becomes evident that within clusters, expansion and consolidation, social action, and contributing to prevalent discourses are dimensions of a single, unified, outward-looking endeavor carried out at the grassroots of society. All these efforts are pursued according to a common framework for action. That's what we heard Marie talk about. And this, above all else, brings coherence to the overall pattern of activity. That's a quote from the Universal House of Justice. And that common framework for action is what we've introduced. And in this session, I hope we all take the time to reflect deeply on how this framework would apply to our communities.
The spiritual energies they released into the world infused a new life into every sphere of endeavor, the results of which are evident in the transformation that has occurred. Material civilization has advanced immeasurably. Astounding breakthroughs in science and technology have been achieved. The gates to the accumulated knowledge of humanity have been flung open, and principles set up by Baha'u'llah for the upliftment and progress of society and for ending systems of domination and exclusion have come to be widely accepted.
Consider his teachings that humanity is one people, or that women are equal with men, or that education must be universal, or that rational investigation of truth must prevail over fanciful theories and prejudice. Across all nations, a large segment of the world's people now agree with the fundamental values.
Nevertheless, arguments against these values, previously confined to the margins of serious thought, are also resurgent in society. A reminder that ideals require the force of spiritual commitment to cement them. For it's one thing to acknowledge something in principle. It's quite another to embrace it with all one's heart, and harder still to refashion societies in ways that give collective expression to it. Yet, this is the aim of communities emerging across the globe that are patterned on Baha'u'llah's teachings. This is our aim, and this is the Universal House of Justice quote again, and I'm just feeling this, nevertheless. I'm feeling it right this minute, right? Because 10 people are dead. Over things that we think we should be able to take for granted by now. We think that we should know that we are one humanity, but getting that to be a deep in the heart thing really requires that we connect with hearts and not just talk about it. When we see the example of Abdul Baha, when he says, yeah, no, when I said oneness of humanity, I meant it, and so where is Louis Gregory? And the question was asked, was Abdul Baha authentically radical? We're given the opportunity to be those people in our communities for one another. And I'm encouraging us all to take this last session to build upon everything that we've learned and to look at this model that the Baha'i community has worked on and learned from and, chiseled out and carved up and, it's been a work in progress, but it's been 26 years, as Marie just said, 26 years of learning that we are now sharing with you, at least partially, because my goodness, the world needs something. The last thing I want to share is that, Marie was talking about what's different. I want to say this. We have had a whole millennia, not a millennia, millennia plural, of religious history. And that history has taught us how we ought to treat our neighbors. The most salient example I can give you is that of the Good Samaritan, where there were people who were passing by the person who was beat up and down in the street, but somebody who was allegedly the outsider stopped and helped, and Jesus said, well, that person is the neighbor. So we've had generations and millennia of religious history to learn that particular lesson, and what we are offering as a Baha'i community to all the world is a systematic way of putting it into practice. Thank you. So, I forgot that I'm still the MC. Okay, so there were more slides, but we did everything out of order, so the slides can go away, and I am honored to introduce to the podium my good friend and fellow choir member, Mrs. Kathy Augello.
Good afternoon. Tamara wondered if I would say a few words about what it's been like for me to spend time with the Baha'i community as someone who is not a Baha'i. So I've written out a few words. So I really admire people who can speak extemporaneously, and I'm not one of them, so I'm going to go ahead and read this. So good afternoon, everyone. Isn't this a wonderful event? And I'm so happy to be here with all of you and share in the loving connection of spirit that permeates all the Baha'i events and activities that I've attended and taken part in over the past dozen years or so. During that time, I've come to see myself as a friend of the Baha'i faith, although I do remain fairly eclectic in my religious and spiritual beliefs, with strong leanings toward Buddhism. But meanwhile, my soul and my life have definitely been nourished and enriched by my connections with my dear Baha'i friends. Through those connections, I've been able to sing with the Souls United Choir, which is always a blessing and a joy, while also affording me with opportunities to participate and contribute to some amazing community events, sometimes to honor important historical figures like Frederick Douglass, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., sometimes to support social and racial justice, as when we sang at the public acknowledgement last year of the terrible lynching in 1892 of Robert Lewis in the city of Port Jervis, New York. My connection with the Baha'i faith has also included involvement with the Race Unity Circle here in Poughkeepsie, where I had the great opportunity to witness the deep and selfless commitment and sense of responsibility that members of the Baha'i faith feel toward their community and toward humankind. This was a deeply valuable experience for me, through which I learned so much about myself, my community and society, my country, and the history and legacy of racism in this country. I learned and grew and benefited so much from my involvement with Race Unity Circle, as I know so many in and around Poughkeepsie and Dutchess County have. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank Deirdre. I see you sitting there, Tamara. Deirdre and Tamara and John, and a shout out to Nancy and Jeff and everyone else for all your steadfast commitment and dedication and hard work in keeping these wonderful groups going. And this conference, of course, is another example of your strong commitment, dedication, and service inspired by your Baha'i faith. And along with Race Unity and Souls United, I've actually been blessed to participate in a variety of other Baha'i-led groups, which include Dinner and Devotional, a virtual gathering organized by Laura and Tina. It's a beautiful half-hour prayer circle on Sunday evenings. Full disclosure, there's not really any dinner involved. But just as well, it keeps things simple. And then there was a number of years ago, I participated in a wonderful discussion group called Soul Cafe, hosted by John and Deirdre, where we explored a whole variety of important topics like death, equality, forgiveness, and many more, using the writings and teachings of all the major world religions as a springboard. And I have Tamara to thank for bringing Virtue's Sanctuary into my life. I just think this is a wonderful program, and I highly recommend it for anyone who is inspired to examine their own character and cultivate those qualities that can help actualize our highest selves. Just briefly, in each meeting, a given virtue is presented, defined, explored, and discussed, all within a very structured format, to help the participants learn about and better understand the role that that virtue plays in their lives. So virtues like gratitude, service, trustworthiness, even creativity, which I hadn't looked at before as a virtue, but the whole process is just so eye-opening, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to share with others and to get to know others. And it is relevant to social action in that as much as thinking about what we want to do in the world and how we want to see the world be, just as relevant is how we want to be in the world. And if you attend Virtue Sanctuary, you might get a chance to practice saying the word inestimable at every meeting. Anyway, so I extend my deep, deep gratitude for all the blessings that the Baha'i faith and community has brought into my life. I love you all. Thank you.
Okay, we're totally not supposed to do that, but I did it anyway. Sorry. Oh, my Lord. Kathy, thank you so much. Okay, choked up a little bit, but okay. We have a special treat. Yesterday, we saw the video of the story of New Era Creative Space that our own Rizwan Idara founded, started out in her living room and grew into this amazing thing that is a nonprofit organization. Well, today, some of the young people from NECS are here, and they're going to share with us right now. So I welcome them to the stage. Do you need to be up here, or do you need the mic? They're going to get on the mic. Okay, you're going to talk quickly.
Well, as you can see, I'm not one of the young people, but I am one of the people of New Era Creative Space. I'm Leslie Fields Cruz. I am one of the artistic directors at New Era Creative Space. And I'm not going to speak long because I really want you all to hear our young people because they are amazing. But what I will do is share with you a story that I think really connects to this particular conference about community and the vibrance of our communities. I had moved up to Cortland Manor with my 2 kids. They were young at the time. And like many of you here, I worked in the city before it was remote. And I had to go in every single day, 5 days a week, into the city. It's an hour commute. I would come home on weekends. I was tired, I was exhausted, my husband was tired and exhausted, and we had very little time to really try to engage with our new community. And I would get frustrated because I could only enroll my children in things on Saturdays, and it was for an hour or 2, but I never got a chance to really talk to the parents or be with the parents because then I had to run off and take them somewhere else. Lo and behold, I saw an ad in Craigslist, and it asked for a drama teacher or artistic director. And I used to do youth theater at the time. I also work in film. And I used to do youth theater, and I said, you know, this might be a really good opportunity for me to work with my kids or bring my kids with me. So I met with Rizwan, and fast forward 14 years later, I think we just talked about that. I'm 16, 14. I'm still with New Era Creative Space. It has become my community. It aligned with my mission, my personal mission of social action and social change through the arts, and also my commitment to our young people to empower them so that they can then move forth, have their own voice, and hopefully impact my grandchildren and those that come after us, right? So last year, when we were all in the pandemic, we were all coming out of the racial reckoning that for myself, it wasn't really a racial reckoning. It's something that I have to deal with every single day. that I walk this earth as a Black woman. We knew that we wanted to bring the kids together. We couldn't do it in person because we were all trapped in our homes because of the pandemic. But we also wanted to make sure that the young people had an opportunity to speak about what's happening in their lives. And so we brought on a woman named Jody Fernandez, who's an amazing teacher at Peekskill High School, who worked on a program that illuminated and highlighted the contributions of people of the African diaspora. So she came in, she joined our team, and with Susan and myself and our choreographer, and we tried to figure out how are we going to create a piece for our young people. Well, what we learned was that the young people could really do it themselves. They took the time to work on their own spoken word pieces. They expanded on a theater, a small scene that Jody had created, and then they improv'd an entire scene that we then incorporated into the show. And so I'd like to invite our two students, Jay and Ari, come on up, please. They're going to do an excerpt from Melanin Magic. And this is called Black Mockingbird. Also, introduce yourselves real quick, your full names and age and everything else.
Hello, everyone. My name is, sorry about that. My name is Ariana Okoth. I am 16 years old, and I go to Peekskill High School. I've been with NECS for 6 years.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jay Wilson. I am 15 years old. I also go to Peekskill High School, and I've been with NECS for 5 years now.
Okay, I guess we'll start.
Ready?
Yeah. Atticus said, mockingbirds don't do one thing except make music for us to enjoy. They don't eat up corn cribs. They don't do one thing but sing their hearts out for us. And that's why it's a sin to kill a mockingbird.
Yet, you sin, bro. Let the silence of your lack of patience wash you clean. Pray around America being great when it's gilded in this age of hashtagging, when all I've asked is for you to sing with me. Make me matter.
All lives matter. Whose all? Which lives? What matters? I greet you with these questions, yet you salute your protest to my protest and let my letter burn in its house. Your Pennsylvania Avenue to my cage, you mocking my bird, killing me softly with your songs of freedom, but for whom?
All.
Whose all?
With liberty and justice for all.
No, whose all? Answer me. See me. See me. My house is burning and the embers igniting, yet all you can say is your house matters too. But what matters? Who decides? For it can't be my mockingbird calling in the night.
For it can't be my brother's fist as he fights.
But he fails because this land was not made for all. Answer me. See me.
Free me.
See me.
Free me.
This land was made for you and me.
Was this land made for me? Or just by me? By me, I mean my ancestors should pick your cotton for free. You know, I was just jogging when you shot me. Hunted and stalked like some wildebeest. Father-son duo, so-called keeping the peace. But I guess I fit the description of what you call a thief. Big, black, beautiful. Your greatest fear, to say the least. This land was made for you and me? No, this land was made for whitewashed prophecies. Yeah, my name Elijah, but add McLean so you can see tragedy. I was a self-taught violinist playing for cats on the street, full of black boy joy, yet you killed me at 23. Innocent until proven guilty. Boy, that's a reach. Ski mask on, I proclaim guilty till shot, it seems.
Say my name, say it with your chest, say it's Ahmaud Aubrey. Just jogging, 25 and black, stole my life like a robbery. Pop went the gun like pop went the smoke of my last breath. Pop when the sunlight pops, can't be called that no more since my death. Pop when the drums guiding the slaves to the ship, so I pop you with the thought, yo, whose land is this? My mother's tears watered the grass near my grave better than rain can. Is keeping the peace more valuable than the life of a black man?
Black man! Pants down, hands down, man down. Anything you say will be used against you right now. Nita's neck, George Floyd, he can't back out. Couldn't even attend his own trial, too busy taking his last bow. But you put down the mantle because you're holier than thou.
Who made you the judge? Who put you above when I pledge allegiance? Who are you dreaming of? Not Brianna, because now she's dead and so beloved. tailored her life to being a nurse, yet that still wasn't enough. You know, this American dream has a funny way of showing love. Can't sleep for dreaming is only for crucibles, huh?
Playing for you was a form of activism for me. Dribbling's not the only thing that makes LeBron an athlete. LeBron James, you told him to shut up for your own sanity. Keep your opinions, keep your oh say, can you see? Because out here, we're not making plays, we're out here raising royalty.
Blackbirds singing in the dead of night.
Rihanna's sun may have set, but her legacy will rise.
Take these broken wings and learn to fly.
Ahmad may have stopped running, but his wings are a battle cry.
All your life, this land was made for you and me.
Oh my goodness. Ladies, thank you. Youth, the sacred trust of the Institute process. Seriously, y'all. We are going to make a couple of adjustments to the program, so I want to flag them for you now. I'll give a little bit more details in a minute. But what's going to happen is we're going to have the children and the junior youth come forward now, and they're going to offer us their offerings. And then we're going to move into our breakout groups. But it's going to be a little different than we planned because we're running late. And so what we're going to do is our breakout rooms are going to be in the cafeteria with our coffee and cookies. And I will explain how we do that after we have the young people. So that was a balm for the soul. Thank you. Okay, as you can see, we're just making it up at this point, but there is a plan. So what we're going to do is we are going to move into our breakout groups, not rooms. The groups will meet at the tables in the cafeteria. I'm going to ask the various and sundry facilitators to organize your groups at tables. So that may mean that you're having a facilitator, depending on how many people can fit at a table. You may have to make 2 tables and split up your facilitators, and that's okay. All right, so we're gonna spread out across tables, and we will move forward like that. Okay, but the fun part about that is there will be cake and cookies. I mean, cookies and not cake. There's no more cake. I'm sorry. There's cookies and coffee. Yeah, yes, so please, yes, thank you, Deirdre. So the Chapman Lounge is fine, and there are tables there as well. The point is to organize around your groups and make sure you have a facilitator at your table.
It's the last session, but not the least, hopefully. All right, so our group decided to answer or work on 2 questions. First question was, in what way can we eliminate social, economic, and cultural barriers and raise consciousness and overcome barriers? And the second question was, how can we develop the capacity for more and more people to contribute to social action? So first we decided that the most important thing is to first identify what barriers are. And our group had a list of barriers, social barriers, cultural barriers, religious barriers, time restraints, social media barrier, language barrier, religious resistance, disinterest in spirituality, racial injustice, racial anger. So those were some of the identified items that we said, okay, how are we going to overcome these barriers? What are we going to do? And there was some discussion about how we sometimes do not listen, how we sometimes hear something somebody saying, and our response is very poor, disinterested response, or we minimize their problem. For example, one of the members said that I said to my coworker, you know, I had only 2 hours of sleep last night, and I feel so tired. And immediately the coworker responded by saying, oh my God, I have not been sleeping for a week. So he said, it didn't help me, not at all. I was not listening to how they're feeling at that moment. I wanted some empathy from me. So then we came up with the idea that how important it is to recognize, empathize with the person. And how do we do that? We acknowledge them. We acknowledge their pain. We understand and recognize what they are feeling and try to connect with that feeling, not by superficially, how can I connect with their pain by saying, okay, I didn't sleep either. Or he gave a very good example actually. He said, I go to the doctor and I said, I have pain in my shoulder, and the doctor said, I have pain all over my body. Well, if we doctors say that, nobody is going to come to us. Because then, what are you here for? Listen to me or listen to you? That I have heard a lot of, I'm being a therapist and a psychiatrist, I've heard that I go to therapists and therapists start talking about their own history and what pains they are going through, and why am I going to go to and pay them for that? So I think that human beings, we don't recognize sometimes that we are really minimizing when we say, I have that too. I went through that cultural prejudice too. So listen to that particular person, and that's how you connect. Love them, and love comes from being there for them and understanding and recognition. So we went quite a bit of time spending on how to recognize and acknowledge the pain of the other. And what an important thing is emotion. Recognize the emotion and feelings, Because human beings, we know, we hear from our ears, we see from our eyes, we sense from our touch. And all the 5 senses we have and the 6th sense, we understand what is going on. But our nervous system, the way it works is, it goes through the spinal cord into the part called amygdala. Amygdala is center of emotion, center of feeling. That's where we feel happiness, sadness, joy, anxiety, nervousness. And that is our initial response we call reptilian response. Response that is whoop, like the snake does. As soon as he sees fear, that somebody is there, pew, and that's what we do sometimes. We respond by fear and anger. So we have to start recognizing that feeling, that maybe this person is connecting with me in certain way, which is provoking an emotion and triggering an emotion which is causing problems for me. So we have to understand that and back off a little bit and say, okay, let me use my frontal cortex. Let me use my prefrontal cortex where it says rational, thinking, clearly thinking, planning, organizing. Those are the things that we as Baha'is can also start working on. So then the question came, okay, that's too complicated. How are we going to do that? So then we said, okay, how are we going to do that? Maybe have small groups in community. And we all get together and talk about it and understand like we are doing here. So now most of you will say, okay, let's see, look at it and see how we can improve this reptilian response. How can we back off and say, okay, what is this person feeling? When we understand what they are feeling, we don't have this reptilian response. We have more rational response and say, this person is in pain. When we feel they're in pain, we identify because we all have gone through pain sometime or the other, so we have some understanding and knowledge of that. So that's why we thought that we will have a little group in our community where first we teach ourselves. With this spirituality, with love, kindness, we understand each other. So then came the word love. Okay, so how we give love, and love has different meaning to everyone. So love is not just one thing, but it is the compassion, the kindness, the caring, the understanding, all that virtues, they're all around the word love, because we heard in the conference today, love creates unity. Unity creates people to do more things together because we understand each other. We also understand our weaknesses and our strengths because we all know we have strengths and we all know we have weaknesses. We all know that. We have to recognize that and understand that and then empathize and then acknowledge and then love, because that's, we do that with our children. They're crying. We understand they're in pain. We don't say, oh, don't cry. I also spilled my coffee this morning. We don't say that. We say, hey, listen, Bo, you have a boo-boo. Let me care for this boo-boo. We make them understand and recognize, look, I also understand what you're going through. So we don't bring our pain into it, because then it is minimizing, it is dismissing, and it's the other person gives a message, this person doesn't want to listen to me. They're in their own world. Let me go to somebody else. All right, so then we talked about how do we develop the capacity and skills? Because Baha'u'llah, we heard this in the conference, Baha'u'llah talks about people learning the capacity and skills to dealing with these challenges that we are facing with humanity at this time. So those are the things that if we can develop in small groups, the capacity to not be having reptilian responses, but rational and logical and loving responses. So that's the thing that we can also develop. And I really, really think virtues are very important, because virtue guide us to having that capacity. And understanding, of course. All right, then we went on with same thing, the education within our community, even if it is 4 or 5 people get together and we talk about these emotions that we go through and how we respond to people and how we not attract them, but make them go away from us. Because one response can cause somebody to say, okay, they don't care about me. They're self-centered. They're thinking about what they have. So we talked about creating ongoing community. And then there were some talks about, how sometimes the peace protests have not caused any kind of real changes. And then, there were discussion that the paradigms that have been set for years and centuries take time, little step at a time, and we all have to take part in that little step at a time to understand and to move forward. And there was some discussion about how the aggression and paradigms will change gradually, but aggression and turning into aggression again and responding to reptilian response again, aggression is not going to be the answer. Love and peace is the answer. Givingness and forgiveness is the answer. And then we talked about, somebody said, it is not the money that mattered, it is the compassion. So somebody brought up the subject of radical love. So some of us, we didn't know what radical love was. And it's unconditional love. It is unfractured love. So that's what we need to learn, to understand others, love them unconditionally, and understand and do the right thing. If somebody has made a mistake, then understand that they have a capacity to change, because human beings are given this good brain to think clearly, and they can learn to do something different than what they did before. And there was an example that was given in the community that a person was making some racial comments and was not very nice. And everybody in the community was feeling so bad that how he did this kind of thing and doing something that is really very abrasive. And but the person realized that and came back to committee that they have formed and said to them, I'm very remorseful. I want to change myself. I want to go to racial amity groups and understand and learn more about it so that I understand, so I won't be the way I was. So that's also, we have to understand that we give some chance to people to come back. If they have done something wrong, that they come back, they're remorseful, they understand, and learn love. So in the end, we were talking about love. Unity leads to all the virtues in the world. And thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Next reporter.
Oh, I'm not.
Who's next?
No, she was our reporter.
Me next? Okay. Hey, I'll go next. I have not nearly as much to report as Zena did. So we broke into two groups where we were, and the first we addressed the first question about the social, economic, and cultural barriers. And so we listed some of them. For instance, affluence and poverty. People who shy away from spirituality and religion, especially organizations of, especially in public spaces. For instance, schools, libraries, and so on. You have to be really, really, they back up if they think you're going to talk about those subjects. Another was social cliques. These social cliques, when I was youth, you thought of cliques as a thing between teenagers. And now those cliques are fed all the way through life. And social media is probably the biggest feeder of these social cliques because they create that echo chamber. People feel quite comfortable saying or writing the most horrific things to people who they think will agree with them and applaud their, the hatefulness. And so this is a real problem. They find and amplify, they amplify each other's thoughts. And then there's the desire for exclusivity. and to be exclusive and negative and, well, we're just going to stick to our kind of people, kind of thing. And willful ignorance, which is expressed through misinformation, disinformation, conspiracy theories, all that sort of stuff. And so after we spent a little time discussing those things, we realized, of course, that they are all spiritual problems, and that really the best solution is for us to commit ourselves to the Institute process, and all of those steps in that framework that we're being given are the only way that we can approach and solve those problems. So the other group was dealing with, I guess, let's see, stirrings of social action in their local area. The examples were race amity, food drive, clothing drive, the interfaith Thanksgiving services. We had a really cool one in Somers, I'll have to tell you. They got treated to Abdul Baha's last talk, as he was leaving. That was kind of cool. What are the signs of social transformation? Things like town cleanup or the walk to clean up trash along the roadways and so on. And, again, interfaith council with church communities. Meeting, they were, some of these councils meet together every month. Let's see, how to develop capacity. You have to invite people to the study circles and devotionals, which is, again, the Institute process. So I think that's all I have to offer.
So, I'm going to introduce the Outers again. I wanted to introduce, Anna's going to give the report, but something special happened with the Outers. We were originally Rockland, Sullivan, Suffolk, Bergen, Ulster County, but the way it all worked out is that it was mostly Ulster, and Ulster kind of found themselves in this group. And so what emerged in our conversations over the course of the weekend is just them finding each other. And so all the stuff that we're doing, it's super, super, super nascent for Ulster, but we're really excited about it. And now over to Ann.
Hi. So we really looked at the question of what can we do, what are we going to do, and so we to get to that social transformation. So we were looking at what the social action includes. So
I need you to talk to the mic, so how about I hold it for you?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We're trying to create kind of a map, a realistic map of where we are as Baha'is and what we're thinking about and what our capacities are. We spoke about mental health, racism, indigenous contributions and treaties, and how we can utilize our tools, the framework for action, as we go into this, as we walk this new walk as a community. So we're looking at what our resources are, be it, who has been trained through the Institute, to which books, and who do we have access to at this time that we can present all this to. And what was really beautiful is that we have a lot of newcomers to this community, such as I am, and I have a lot of needs as a Baha'i and my family, like what we aspire to and like the support we need. And I got to meet a few people today that like I definitely want to work with at realizing those dreams. So it's like really amazing getting our hearts via studying. What was that?
Getting it in our hearts. Yeah, making it real in our hearts.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So like that we really get to acknowledge and understand, where we are, what we're walking with, what drives us, what our stamina is. Not just, of course, Baha'u'llah's teachings, Abdul Baha's example, but also like all these actions that are important in our communities and the greater world. And we are looking at creating a process. And I think to do that, we are organizing to have an email list altogether and to start meeting kind of on a regular basis and making those connections with one another for what we can do and will do and want to do and dream to do. So yeah, thank you. Anything else I might have missed? I just want to share that we brought some mushrooms that my daughter and I picked this morning in our farm, and they're by the front door for whoever wants to bring home.
Mushroom farmer, she knows what is good.
Wow. We grew them.
Yes.
They're not wild. They're like farms.
What kind?
They're yellow oysters we have created today.
Oh, thank you. You're an angel.
All right, so I didn't present us before, but we were the Duchess team. And what we really focused on was the third paragraph. Closely connected with the capacity for engaging in social action is the capacity to contribute to the discourses of society. So some of our takeaways from that reading was conversation, which you had touched upon. Being an active, am I standing in the right spot? Okay. Being an active listener and an active communicator, I think is really, really important. Encouraging others to share their points of view. Being a consultant, but more importantly, putting our egos aside while we're doing that, because if we let our egos get in the way, it's going to kind of avoid and ruin the conversations. And most importantly, being humble when having these conversations. Another thing that we talked about is empowering the youth and connecting that knowledge. So we really want to bring the youth into these conversations so that they're involved and aware as well. And the questions that we focused on was question number 1, to reflect on some of the social, economic, and cultural barriers. And some of the barriers that we had listed, as they were already listed before, were poverty, racism, access to quality education. That was a huge, and that's pretty much what we focused a lot of our conversations on, and also limited resources. So for example, limited transportation to after-school programs, limiting food sources to our students. And what we were talking about as part of this, as some solutions were, before creating, because we're a very solution-oriented type of people, not just Baha'is in general. We see a problem, we want to solve it. But before that is really learning about what that community needs. So learning about what the actual problem is before jumping into a solution. And then when we have learned, is kind of creating or building programs to bridge these barriers. So for example, if the need is students and food, what can we do as Baha'is to bring these sources, these foods over to our students? And that's pretty much what we talked about a lot of the time. Helping plan for the community, finding an entry point. So there are so many different problems that there currently are, right? Seniors needs transportation to their oncologist. Again, students don't have food, or there's poverty. So finding one point of entry and kind of focusing on that, and then moving on from there. So I think if we try to kind of solve many issues at once, it's where we feel overwhelmed and we don't move forward with it. But finding that one point of entry and kind of working together as a community is what's going to help us move. And then lastly, what we talked about too, and this is something that we could all do, and we talked about it earlier this morning, is focusing on question number 4, where we want to challenge our local leaders. So we don't have to take on all of this on our own. We can use our local leaders for support. You know, they're always ready for a photo op opportunity, as we talked about. So, you know, you can have that photo op opportunity, but help us. So that's what we have.
O thou the beloved of my heart and soul, I have no refuge save thee. I raise no voice at dawn save in thy commemoration and praise. Thy love encompasseth me, and thy grace is perfect. My hope is in thee. O God, give me a new life at every instant, and bestow upon me the breath of the Holy Spirit at every moment, in order that I may remain steadfast in thy love, attain unto great felicity, perceive the manifest light, and be in the state of utmost tranquility and submissiveness. Verily, thou art the giver, the forgiver, the compassionate. Abdul Baha.